Hello everyone, welcome back to Chasing a Murder. Before we get started, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Right now we are on Life Beyond the Grave, part 103. This is attached to the Lori Vallow case. Also, the Chad Daybell, her lover, her team member, who was preparing to build the Church of the Firstborn. We're back on the timeline. A lot of people are wondering, where did Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell get a lot of their ideas? Some of their ideas did stem from people like Julie Rowe. In a podcast around April of 2019, Julie mentions being a goddess and also talks a little more on multiple probations.
Because we just love each other so much, we wanted to be together. And it's much deeper than that. It's what characteristics can I develop? What can they help me develop, and what can I help them develop to become more Christ-like, to ascend, to become like father and mother, to become a god and goddess? What things needed to be chiseled to make me a good diamond? And I have a lot of rough edges. And so who could I marry that would help teach me this, going into these family lines? What would be a good situation to help me create who I want to become? And so I also see this pattern. I've had a lot of clients who have been told by the Spirit that they have condescended to help. Maybe they're like a 4.3 light, second or third creation, and they come and they're married to a 3 light first creation, and the Spirit's told them that. And there's this pride energy that enters in, and Lucifer whispers in the ear and says, "You're only here because you condescended to help him because he has a lot of work he needs to do." That's a lie and it's a false belief. If you've been told that, you're listening to a false spirit.
To up your chances of becoming a god or a goddess, you have to be able to discern situations in your life.
And you're still getting a lot more out of the deal, because by being married to them, they chose a hard mission. Now, this is the thing. I see younger spirits that are married to these older spirits. By the nature of having a more complex energy system, because of being an older spirit, there comes with it in of itself, I guess you could say, extra demons and unclean spirits that are assigned to you. And those who are assigned or who chose to marry those individuals are on a fast track. They are choosing. These are some of the Lord's brightest, noblest spirits. And they chose a difficult mission, being married to you as an older spirit. And I can't go into why that is, but I can just tell you that I'm so tired of hearing from people, "Oh, I had a session with them the other day, and they said, I came as proxy and I'm here just for everybody else." That's a lie. It's a lie. None of us come as proxy. We come for a purpose, and it's a much higher purpose than what people are being given to understand. And that, I don't judge that person for saying that, because I understand why they're saying it, but I had to basically say to that person, that's not correct. See, you have an incomplete doctrine being given to you by whoever's telling you that. You're not getting the full doctrine. You're not getting the full picture. You're not getting the full understanding. And none of us, in mortality, as celestial beings, including myself, because I still am veiled, none of us have the full picture. You're told that, you're listening to a false spirit. Your husband or your wife, who is a younger spirit, is just as much of a help to you, if not more, than you are to them.
Yep.
Because you cannot become a god or goddess unless you learn how to love unconditionally, teach, be patient, help, and get nothing out of the deal.
So again, she mentions the ranking system. So 4.3 light. She says that they didn't use it in the way that Chad and Lori was using it, but that's hard to really understand and separate that these are different teachings. Julie Rowe had also mentioned the fact that they were trying to build cities of light as we speak for the future. This is the same thing that Lori and Chad would also set as goals, except theirs was going to be more about them. And like Julie Rowe, they were trying to purchase property for this type of thing. But how can they afford to purchase this property when in fact, neither one of these guys are making very much money. The further into the future they go, the less money they make. The only way that they can get money is through insurance policies, and we'll talk more about that as we get, move forward. So I want to continue with a few more things from Julie Rowe's podcast, and she actually has her partner working with her on this one, Eric Smith, from podcast number 58, Temple Worship. This was actually uploaded around January 18th of 2018, so this is right when Lori is starting to lose it and do all these crazy things like disappear for months, say that Charles Vallow is a dark spirit, that he is dead. And it's around this time that Lori Bell is still listening to these podcasts.
Special idea of the land of Moray. You can read about the land of Moray. It's also known as Moriah or Moria, depending on how you pronounce it, in Genesis 12, verse 6. If you look at the Hebrew word for plain, it was actually tree. They should have said the Tree of Moray. And this is when Abraham was commanded to offer his son Isaac on an altar. He was 3 days' journey from the land of Moray, and the whole time he's traveling with Isaac and the servants that were with him, he's thinking every day, how am I going to do this horrible thing to my son? Now you just imagine this journey and this walk. For 3 days, imagine that you're going to slaughter your son on an altar. I can't imagine the heartache he had as he walked to the plain of Moray. But as I was just saying, it wasn't the plain of Moray, it was the Tree of Moray. There was a well-known tree in this area, so well-known that it had a name, the Tree of Moray. This tree was on a hill, and this is where Abraham offered Isaac, or was attempted to offer Isaac.
This is very interesting. If you remember some of the things that Lori says in trial, basically that maybe she insinuated her kids might have known about what happened to them before it happened. While Julie Rowe is talking about Abraham offering his son and the fact that Isaac most likely knew about this and he was more than willing to be that sacrifice.
With him, as Isaac also knew that he was to be sacrificed and he went willingly, is that Isaac laid himself down on the altar after he helped build the altar with his father, who Abraham was elderly at that time and Isaac was 33. As they prepared to offer sacrifice of Isaac, if you were to pretend that you were laying on the altar, Abraham stood off to Isaac's right side. That was also symbolic. And then the tree was behind Abraham. It was a pretty large tree that, and it looks to me like an olive tree. I don't know for sure if it was, but it looks kind of like an olive tree as far as the image in my mind. And some of the branches hung over a bit, just beyond reach from where Abraham and Isaac built the altar. So that is significant. We could get into things like it was sacred ground, it was a light portal, interesting things they showed me about that. And then just before they offered sacrifice and did that, they knelt down by that tree together and prayed to the Lord to give them supplication and to help them through that.
We all know that JJ, a few months from now, would be laid to rest near a tree on Chad Daybell's property, so keep that in the back of your mind.
Significant. I need to think on that a little bit more. I know that Isaiah spoke of a sycamore tree, but I have to remember what that context was. This place, Moria, is a sacred place. Like Julie said, the light portals and that kind of thing. It does appear to have been a consecrated and sacred place. We find later that in that very same place where Abraham attempted to offer Isaac is where Solomon's temple was built. Later, Solomon's temple was destroyed in 587 BC by the Babylonians. This was shortly after Nephi and his family, Lehi, and their family left for the Americas. It was destroyed, and then about 70 years later, was it King Cyrus came in and had commissioned the second temple to be built, Herod's temple, which lasted for a good 500-600 years and was destroyed later. So those two temples, the first two Jewish temples, were built on that plain of Moray, where Abraham offered or attempted to offer Isaac. I find that
So Eric would say that he would find this quite significant. And boy, he doesn't realize how significant this would be to Lori and Chad in the future.
to these temples, Solomon's temple, Herod's temple, they were laid out in an east to west direction. Now, I'm a mapper, and so some will know I find interest in the geographic things and the spatial layout of things. Direction had absolute significance to ancient Israelites.
I would love to play the rest of this for you guys, but go over to Julie Rowe's YouTube channel. Look for number 58, Temple Worship, and finish listening to that. Now remember, Eric brings up an interesting thing where they considered the direction east, remember that, as a not so good sign. Now let's go ahead and jump to a few things that we're learning right now. According to Lori Vallow's cousin, he says when she was living with Charles in Hawaii, he had gone there to visit around 2017. Around that time, they were talking about this phenomenal book, Visions of Glory. Her cousin said that he thought this was a great book, but you had to keep it vanilla. But what his cousin did was take it to an extreme that she believed a lot of that stuff out of the book. According to him, he says that he and Lori talked about this book all the time, and he believes that he was the one that actually called her and told her about this book when it first came out. He said that Lori wasn't doing storage or prepping so much anymore, that she was doing it more spiritually, but that's not really true. Though she was moving a lot, we heard how Charles' underwear and missing clothes and Chandler had actually been put behind her storage. That's in 2019. Lori's cousin Southwick appeared on 2 seasons of the hit National Geographic show called Doomsday Preppers. He had also been on multiple television programs actually discussing prepping. So again, he was claiming that she wasn't collecting food storage, which that's not true according to Adam. It's not true according to Zach or Charles. He believed instead she was focused on spiritual and religious preparation, which she was as well. It was him in 2017 when things really started to change, according to Charles, that had made a visit with Lori Vallow. And all they did was talk about prepping the entire time. So could it have been her cousin that had this profound impact on how Lori perceived the world? It wasn't Chad Daybell's books during this time. It would shortly follow after this, but it wasn't Chad. He is another witness that claims that Lori Vallow was speaking of the gathering of the 144,000 righteous people ahead of the second coming of Jesus Christ. He also claimed that she was this amazing, phenomenal mother that I just do not agree with. So many of us had wondered, why is it that Chad and Lori use portals, and where do they come from? Well, we kind of covered it, that Strahd, he might be the reason for this, and it is influenced by the end time book, Visions of Glory, that her cousin is talking about and that we talked about many, many times in previous videos. Strahd talked about his original series that the 144,000 talked about in the book of Revelation, where a group of men and women used portals to move through time and space to gather the elect. So there's another thing, just keep that in the back of your mind. We know that they were using their portals to travel, to connect spiritually. And there are several more people who knew about these portals a lot more than what they're admitting, but they refused to share the package. It wasn't just magical portals that they were using. In fact, Chad was using a necklace to find answers to some things. Just recently on True Hidden Crime, there was a special guest that actually suggests she knows how Chad Daybell come up with this necklace he used to find a lot of answers for a lot of questions. Remember, Melanie Gibbs said that he was using this necklace as a pendulum. We have heard the name Little Bear, but I've had not much interest in Little Bear. Not that I don't care about these people, but as far as my research. Now, Janelle Murphy, which is Little Bear's significant other, was able to hang out with this group a little bit as that fire began to grow. She had actually met Sean Little Bear at some of these little conferences and stuff that, these groups were going to. It appears at some point she actually looked up to several of these people like Melanie Gibb and Chad Daybell. She didn't feel as if she fit in with these guys, and boy, she should feel lucky about that. But anyways, here's what she had to say about that pendulum.
And the next day, Sean went to Chad's friend who was at the church and was cleaning the church with Chad.
Okay.
And
you know who this friend is then? You know who this friend is?
I don't know his name.
Okay. Okay.
But I know Sean went to visit him.
Okay.
And then Sean came home the next day and related the story that him and Chad, the friend, good friend of Chad's, were cleaning the church, and that there was a necklace hanging on the podium, and his friend said, Chad, you need to put that in Lost and Found. And he told Sean that Chad didn't do that. He wore it all the time and wore it around his neck. That's the story.
That's the story. Do you know what that necklace looked like? I heard it was an owl.
I heard it was an owl. But, if you think about like what the owl represents in a lot of these mystery kind of stuff, it's actually not a good symbol. My personal opinion,
yeah, it's like death or an omen, right?
Yeah. My personal opinion is I think that's how he comes up with all the information he came up with. The light, the dark. The thing that I want to say to people about divining is that if your heart is not in the right place, and you focus on darkness, that's what you're going to get.
So he was into divination as well. Basically, he had stole a necklace, is what it seems like. It's around this time of 2019 that necklace becomes very significant in finding answers for this group of people. He is now dabbling deeply into magic. And was he using this necklace to determine who were zombies, who were dark, who was light? Would it be so out of the norm for a Mormon to use magical items? Well, not necessarily, because we have learned that Joseph Smith used rods and seer stones. So would that be considered to be normal? Well, according to New Mormons today, they say they do not practice these types of things. They do not believe in that type of magic. Yet, the religion is actually kind of littered through the past of people using magical items. No matter what, Chad Daybell is definitely moving away from the mainstream of his religion. And Lori was supporting him, his beliefs, and drawing her beliefs in And they combine these beliefs to bring this very toxic teaching to a small group of people at first. During this time, both Chad and Lori, their finances are becoming an issue. This has been confirmed by Julie Rowe, where she hears Chad Daybell talk about finances and becoming an issue, and he's also having a few problems with his marriage. But don't forget, Lori is making Charles believe that she might come back to him. That's the way he feels. Colby Ryan testifies that his mother tells him that she's running low.
Mostly to tell me that they were, quote unquote, out of money. I'll object to any hearsay, Your Honor. I don't know who he's referring to.
The question was regarding Lori Vallow.
However, rule it. Well, he's quoting either Charles or Lori. I don't know which.
All right, let me ask another question, Mr. Wood, and clarify who the character would be.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan, in regards to the question I just asked, were those conversations with Lori Vallow?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that she would frequently tell you that she and Charles were out of money?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, at this point, if Lori's running low on money, that means Alex Cox would be running low on money, Melanie Gibb, and several other people. So, how is she getting money? What is Tyler Ryan doing? Does Lori Vallow's family members that are supporting her realize that her world is falling apart? During this time, Lori Vallow's family they do not understand how much they're being gaslighted by Lori. Remember when Joe Ryan was tased by Alex Cox? That was actually supposed to be an attempted murder. But for them, they said they didn't necessarily believe that they were going to do anything that bad to Joseph. But since then, they might think they're wrong. Here is an interview from Justin Lum, Fox 10 Phoenix. You can go there and check out the rest of this interview after listening to this clip.
I'm sorry to say, I since checked out, but we had bought in to what I believe now is gaslighting about Joe Ryan. Okay, maybe there's some truth in it, maybe not. I don't know, but I know just looking since then at psychological reports, etc., it certainly wasn't what we were hearing at the time. And when I say we, family members. So we were much more Team Lori at that time, and feeling like, yeah, like Joe was a child molester. And so the fact that Alex tased him, okay, we didn't see it as a murder attempt. We didn't. Those of us, at least I didn't see it as a murder attempt. We saw it as, okay, here's Alex standing up for his sister because they're having this terrible divorce battle. Okay, now in hindsight, maybe we'd see it differently, but we didn't have that in hindsight, of course. So
this was a very important interview for me. So let's listen a little bit more.
Now in hindsight, maybe we'd see it differently, but we didn't have that in hindsight, of course. So we didn't take it nearly as seriously as it turned out to be. I was going to say as we should have, but we didn't know. And we were operating under the gaslighted assumption that he was all evil and Lori was only protecting her children. And I believe she was protecting her children, but now in retrospect, we can look back and say maybe there's a lot more than that.
So that's Lori's Uncle Rex talking. And my voice is kind of going out because I'm sick again. Guys, I don't want to have to tell you that because I just stayed sick this year. In fact, my channel has taken a beating through trying to get through and run this channel this year, and it's been tough. Well, let me share a little bit of their beliefs. We're going to hop around just a little bit. So this group also believed that once a person became exalted, they couldn't be held responsible for their actions here on earth. We have heard several witnesses talk about Lori pounding her fist on the table, saying it doesn't apply for me. This is because Lori was already exalted. Zulema told investigators, according to their report anyways, she would often slam her hand on the counter and state, that doesn't count for me. So a lot of people are wondering, why is Lori spending so much time at the temple trying to reach God? And we have determined that Strahd was very specific in describing the process to commune with heavenly beings as much as you could. And they are living supposedly these godly lives, but yet meeting at hotel rooms where Chad and Lori are being very intimate. And Gibbs says this was according to God's will because they have been married multiple lives. At this point, Serena does one of her last podcasts. And one of the subjects that they're talking about are fiery darts that are being spit at them from Satan. And Lori is actually doing a podcast with Serena. And this is just before she deems Serena, that she can't be part of their group anymore. As they move forward, these burner phones become more important to them, and they start using code names or pet names like Lily, Bubby, Raphael, avoiding the standard text messaging. Instead, messaging systems and inside apps like a popular Karaoke phone app, investigators find out later. So one thing we do notice is Lori Vallow loves the karaoke, and so she's using her karaoke app to communicate her secret messages and codes to all her little group, Melanie, Chad Daybell. And we never hear Melanie Gibb ever mention that, do we? Lori and Chad continue to find friends and followers who are like-minded in their belief systems. But a few of them, several of them are women, but Lori is becoming quite jealous of several women in this group. But the way that Lori and Chad feel is they know a lot more than even President Nelson. They are more prophetic than Nelson at this point. They are very special beings, and Alex Cox has come to realize this, according to Zulema and a few other witnesses. Lori's brother, Alex Cox, is drawn in more and more daily. So is her niece, Melanie Boudreaux. Around this time, Ian Pawlowski, who will later be in the story, is going through a very difficult divorce. He actually violates a domestic violence protection order. That's April 10th of 2019. He's now on his path to finding his next wife pretty soon after this. But during this time in his life, it's very difficult because he's not ready to let his family go. But it's very interesting that we're hearing some things about domestic violence. Julie Rowe is actually doing a few energy sessions throughout the rest of this year on Saturdays. I won't go over the dates. We don't have time. I'm actually trying to hump through pretty quick now. Around this time, Jason Mao, while he's at the Firm Foundation Expo, the 23rd International Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. Now, some of these conferences they're drawing in some people, so it's over 7,000 people they expected to attend some of these conferences. So that's around April 13th of 2019. And actually, these conferences are really growing like crazy compared to the years before. I wanted to share more on that, but we're going to skip through. According to Julie Rowe, she claims that Chad had mentioned to her that she and he were actually married in a past life as well. But now, Lori is keeping him happy by sending him more dance videos, being more intimate with him. But now they're ran out of money, so she's not going to be able to keep following him around. And each day, Chad Daybell is brushing off more and more of his closer friends, including his family members as well. On Nancy Grace, later on in 2020, she interviews Julie Rowe, and she shares something that was quite standout about Chad Daybell. She has accusations that he kind of made moves on her. Now, many people have been following this story are wondering, was Chad hitting on Julie like he was other women? And Nancy Grace basically comes straight forward and says, did this happen? And this is what she had to say.
You knew Chad Daybell. Did he ever hit on you?
Yes,
What happened?
and my husband knows it.
Did Chad Daybell think you were one of his past wives too?
Yes.
So this is his line. Every attractive
Yes.
woman, he tells them he knew them in a previous life and they were married. So basically, why not just have sex right now because you've already been married in another life? I'm not a member of the LDS. I'm not familiar with a lot of what you're saying, but I'm seeing a pattern. You worked closely with him.
Yes.
You're attractive. And bam, suddenly he remembers, hey, I was married to you in another life.
Yes.
Then there's Lori Vallow. Then there's the other lady you told me about that he was texting and her husband found out.
Right.
That's 3 right there.
He also told me that he thought he was married to Melanie Gibb, and you were the first person I've said that to other than 3 people in my closest circle, and my husband, of course.
You have just given me chill bumps all down my arms because talking to you and looking at you, I just knew it. I just knew Daybell hit on you. And now you're telling me that about Melanie. How did you find out she also was married to Chad Daybell in another life?
I only heard it from Chad.
I don't know what it is about Chad Daybell. Apparently, a lot of women fall for this.
All kinds of women, because he's misusing his spiritual gifts. It is, to date, one of the hardest things I have ever experienced.
Now, that's a very chopped up version. You can go to Fox Nation and check out that entire interview. But she says that there is a point where Chad actually tries to grind on her. But a lot of people wasn't certain whether to believe her or not, because when the story first broke, she began to be very defensive of Chad Daybell. And it took a little bit before she finally jumped on the right train. So is it true Chad Daybell is telling several women that he's been married to him in the past, and even suggests that he was married to Melanie Gibb in the past? Well, we haven't heard that, but it could be possible. What's interesting is the fact that you have Melanie Gibb moving away from her husband around this time, Julie Rose moving away from her husband around this time, several more women who are moving away from their husbands, and there are others that are moving closer or trying to move in on Chad around the same time that Lori is. Crazy stuff, but seems to be true. Now, Ian Pawlowski's wife at the time was Natalie Pawlowski. She files for divorce April 15th, 2019. Just a day before, we are told that Ian was being abusive. So why was Ian getting a divorce? Well, he kind of goes through that, at least gives his side of the story. We don't hear from his wife, and we'll share that on the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.